Let's start with the Rafah invasion, the Rafah siege.
Hamas leaders are considering a new Middle East ceasefire proposal from Israel. The deal includes a 40-day truce in return for the release of some hostages. It would also allow for displaced families to return to northern Gaza. It's reported to involve new wording on restoring calm to Gaza. It's designed to satisfy.
The war cabinet desperately wants to attack Rafah. You got fucking the centrist liberal coalition constituency with Benny Gantz, who is the liberal general who wants to attack Rafah. You got America saying, do not fucking touch Rafah. That's really fucked up. So Benjamin Netanyahu has to basically communicate America's wishes to the war cabinet. And then you also have the Smotrich and the Bezalel Smotrich and the further right coalition of Itamar Ben-Gvir, who also want to fucking hit Rafah and just do as much genocide as possible. So Benjamin Netanyahu is stuck between a rock and a hard place. So does he care about Palestinian lives? Of course not. Of course, he loves killing Palestinians. Don't misunderstand me at all. But he also understands with his, 20, 30 fucking years of experience with dealing with the United States of America as the state representative of Israel, that invading Rafah is probably going to really piss off the Western world and just like maybe even sever some ties. You got the ICC arrest warrants that are coming down potentially. There's a lot of Western pressure on Israel. Now, obviously, many of you will say, Western pressure on Israel from actual organs of the government? The fuck do you mean? These guys are doing a genocide. I mean, there's a lot of Western pressure on Israel in a way that Israel has never seen before. Because if you're Israel, you're used to being babied all day, every day. They're like, how much money you want? Oh, I'm so mad at you, but here's like fucking $1 gazillion of weapons that you can use on directly targeting children inside of Gaza, right? For that to be what they're used to, this level of scrutiny over their behavior, over their actions, even in the fucking media, and certainly from actual bodies of government, not just like the feckless institution of the United Nations, but like actual American politicians, like being like, yo, you can't fucking invade Rafah, has caused Benjamin Netanyahu to be a little bit more careful about this process. But he still obviously has internal issues. One of the major roles he's playing here is obviously defending his legacy and maintaining his power, because if he's out of office, if he's out of the war cabinet, he's gone. If there's a new election, he's gone, right? Or at least like he most likely will not be able to build another coalition. So, having said that, he doesn't want to fucking let the war cabinet go. So this is the reason why the even further right elements like Ben-Gvir, even further right elements like Smotrich are capable of basically saying, if you don't do what we want you to do, we'll disband the war cabinet. So he's weak in that sense, because if the war cabinet goes away, new government comes in, he's fucking cooked, he goes to jail. That's the situation at hand. So these are the different forces converging here on why, if you're wondering like why Israel has not, gone into Rafah yet, it's because of self-preservation from every angle all the way down. And that's why there is like limitations. Now, having said that, it's dog shit. The way that they're trying to, like the fact that they're trying to invade Rafah or even talking about this as anything beyond like another pressure point for Hamas from their perspective is insane to me. Like one might assume that they're simply talking about invading Rafah, even though they don't actually want to invade Rafah, because they want to apply pressure to Hamas so that Hamas will listen to their demands and like lower their otherwise very reasonable demands that they've made time and time again. Like maybe it's just brinksmanship, maybe it's just politics. Or maybe if you are fucking Ben-Gvir or Smotrich, it's literally wanting to kill as many Palestinian children as possible because that's the only way you can come. So there are a lot of different factors. There are a lot of different motivations at play here. But it seems The Israeli prime minister says the Rafah attack will go ahead with or without a truce deal.
Hamas's demand for a permanent ceasefire. A source close to the talks told the BBC the new proposal from Israel is significantly different from previous offers. The US Secretary of State Antony Blinken called this deal extraordinarily generous. That view echoed by the UK's Foreign Secretary Lord Cameron.
All the pressure in the world and all the eyes of the world should be on them today, saying take that deal. It will bring about this stop in the fighting that we all want to see so badly.
According to Israel, 133 hostages are still being held by Hamas in Gaza. At least 30 of them are presumed dead. Mediators from Egypt, Qatar and the US have been attempting for weeks to broker a deal to bring another pause in the fighting. Now, one source has told...
I just want y'all to remember, from the jump, there has never been a moment where anyone in the Western media or any Western politician has openly stated Hamas has actually made some reasonable demands here. It's always Hamas is fucking up the bag. Israel is giving them such a great deal, the greatest deal of all time. And these guys just don't want to take it. There has never been a single fucking piece of coverage in Western media, with the exception of like every now and then they'll have like a hostage negotiator, like a professional hostage negotiator guy or whatever, come up and be like, no, it's actually Israel that's fucking up the bag. But that's like on CNN International, or maybe every now and then they'll have like Christian Amanpour interview someone, and then that interview is it. Like that never goes anywhere. That never gets repeated over and over again. Everyone takes it for granted. Israel always has the most generous deals, and Hamas is always saying no to the generous deals. Why? Jew hatred. They have made very clear-cut demands. You might not agree with the actions of that happened, the actions that Palestinian resistance took on October 7. Certainly, there were a shit ton of tragedies, acts of terror. Having said that, however, their demands have been very reasonable and very just. Okay? As a political body, as a unit, as a group that is working on militarily resisting the apartheid regime, it's been fairly fucking just.
For the BBC, they are cautiously optimistic about the prospects of this deal being accepted. In a development, though, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says that Israel will carry out an offensive against Hamas in Rafah, regardless of whether or not a ceasefire deal has been reached. Well, as those negotiations take place, fighting continues in Gaza. We've seen smoke rising over the centre of the Strip earlier today as airstrikes hit the territory. The Health Ministry said there had been a further 47 deaths in the last day. It says more than 34,500 people have died since the conflict began almost 7 months ago, following the Hamas attack on Israel on October the 7th. Our Middle East correspondent Yolanda is in Jerusalem.
This Hamas delegation that was in Cairo meeting Egyptian and Qatari mediators left late yesterday, and we understand that they're now in consultations with the top Hamas leadership. Arab media suggesting that they will get back to the mediators by the end of tomorrow with their response to the latest deal that's on the table. Now, feeding into all of that, we do have these new comments by the Israeli Prime Minister. On the one hand, he's reiterating what he's said now for many weeks, that Israel is still determined to go into Rafah in the very south of the Gaza Strip to eliminate Hamas battalions there, that they'll do that with or without a new hostage deal. But obviously the timing here is of the essence. This is a very sensitive moment, and there are fears that, you know, anything could scupper a new deal at this point.
We're just seeing pictures there of Benjamin Netanyahu. The War Cabinet continues to meet, of course. How much domestic disagreement is there, and disagreement within the cabinet about what should happen with Rafah?
Yeah, the disagreement ranges from like, do we kill every single Palestinian child, or should we kill 98% of the Palestinian children? That's the fucking major disagreement in the War Cabinet. Okay, all jokes aside, the major disagreement is like Netanyahu is trying to fucking keep it together while also meeting the demands of the West. He has at least somewhat of a better understanding of how the Western world is perceiving their actions than like the fucking sociopathic fascists, both to his left, which is such a funny thing to say, like Benny Gantz, who is also incredibly horny about invading Rafah, militarily dealing with Hamas. And then to his right, You have the absolute, like the even more psychopathic monsters. It's such a funny way to, like, it's such a funny thing to, like, cover. Yeah. The major disagreement in the most reductive terms can be reduced to it's between we got to do it right now and Rafah can wait. We got to get the hostages first.
I mean, within the overall cabinet of the coalition government led by Mr. Netanyahu, you do have some really deep divisions now. And those on the far right have really been saying that Israel needs to prioritize going into Rafah in order to win this war. One far right minister, Bezalel Smotrich, said the government had no right to exist if it didn't prioritize that. And then in response, we had Benny Gantz, who's a member of the war cabinet, more of a centrist, coming back saying that the government had no right to exist if it blocked a hostage deal. So you can see there is that dynamic going on. The latest comments by Mr. Netanyahu do appear to put him more on the side of his far-right ministers, but he's also going to be under a lot more international pressure in the coming hours, as we're expecting the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken to come to meet Israeli leaders. The US and others have really been pushing for a new deal at this point that would bring home Israeli hostages and in exchange have a sort of 6-week ceasefire.
Guys, I'm beginning to feel like I hate to make such strong claims on this broadcast, but I'm beginning to feel like the Israeli war cabinet and those in positions of power in Israel don't actually care about the hostages at all. Just a suspicion. I have this sneaking suspicion. That if they cared about the hostages, the well-being of the hostages, they probably wouldn't have fucking flattened Gaza where the hostages were and killed a shit ton of them. And the remaining hostages, they're also actively trying to assassinate. I don't know. It's just a sneaking suspicion. I don't know. I can't say conclusively. I can, however, tell you that at the top of the hour, there is going to be a 3-minute ad break, and that is conclusive. But it's wild because, like, they put the fucking posters up. It's like, but they put the posters up everywhere in New York and in Los Angeles. There are all of the Israeli flags on Beverly Hills, like right on Santa Monica Boulevard. Right as soon as you enter Beverly Hills, you have all those flags honoring the hostages. It's just shocking to me. It's just shocking to me because, like, it kind of feels like the Israeli government doesn't fucking care. You know? What the fuck happened? Yeah. On October 8, I told you that the Israeli government demonstrated that they care more about killing Palestinians than they do about the safety and security of Jews living inside of Israel proper, which included the hostages and which included literally the Jewish people living inside of Israel in the kibbutzim at the time. I brought up the Hannibal Doctrine as a reason for why I don't believe that Israel, the reason why I don't believe Israel cares about the hostages is because of their own official policy. Their own military policy is to kill Israeli hostages rather than let Hamas or a Palestinian group actually take those hostages and use them as a political bargaining chip. That's the reason. They would rather continue killing them and continue doing their ethnic cleansing campaign.
In the Gaza Strip, and we've had various Western leaders coming out saying that this is something that is positive. Arab ministers supporting that as well.
Yolande, we've already heard from Mr. Blinken, who said that the US has not yet seen a plan that gives us confidence that civilians can be effectively protected in Rafah. How would you judge the US influence on Benjamin Netanyahu at the moment and their leverage?
Well, the US position is very much that really because of the number of people in Rafah, down along the Egyptian border, that have been displaced by the fighting, something like 1.4 million people crammed into a very small area. That means that no ground offensive can really take place effectively there. It's going to be impossible to move that many people in a way that, you know, Israel can go in with the force that it wants to go after what it says are 4 Hamas battalions that are still based in that city. It's the one part of the Gaza Strip where there has not been a full ground offensive up to now. But it's really not clear just how much leverage the US has over Israel. Of course, we know that on the international stage, it consistently shields Israel, that it is a major donor, just recently approved billions more dollars in military aid for Israel. But, you know, Israel has consistently made clear that when it comes to issues of its own security, it will very much take advice from the Americans. We know that there have meetings being taken place to try to discuss alternatives to a full ground invasion of Rafah with Israeli and US officials. But in the end, Israel says it makes its own decisions.